All right, I think we can go ahead and get the evening started. Thank you everyone for being here. And officially, good evening, everybody. It's good to be gathered here this evening with all of you. Allow me to officially welcome all of our students to say congrats on finishing up the final week of courses. And to all of our guests from outside the university, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the virtual version of LMU. It's with tremendous excitement that I kick off tonight's Reset the Room Symposium, directly following our inaugural installation back in March. It's been my great pleasure to put this event together in collaboration with LMU's Institute of Business Ethics and Sustainability and our College of Business Administration. We're all brought together tonight by the on-campus organization Brothers of Consciousness, of which I am proud to be the co-president, along with Desmond Hedman, who you also see here on stage. You'll be hearing from him later in the evening. Tonight, we'll be focusing in on the stories of 8 highly impactful entrepreneurs and creators as they retell personal stories of resilience and ingenuity. As you listen, it's our hope that you resonate with an aspect of their stories, and we can, as a community, be inspired and learn from this tremendous path. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise you the chat box is going to be your friend tonight. I'll get into the specifics of Reset the Room in the evening in just a few minutes, but I'd first like to hand the virtual microphone to our College of Business Administration's Dean, Dean Dale Smith.
Thank you, Christian. I appreciate. And good afternoon or good evening, depending on where in the world you are coming from, or maybe even good morning to everyone. On behalf of the College of Business Administration, our CBA, it is my distinct pleasure to also welcome you to Reset the Room. As the Dean of the College, I am so proud of what our student body, our faculty, and our staff have achieved in a really difficult and challenging year. And this event tonight is one of those points of pride, specifically because it's an event that was student-driven and student-led. So I hope you'll indulge me in sharing just a few thoughts as we open up this program and set a context for what lays before you. We are inspired by our CBA mission of advancing knowledge and developing business leaders with moral courage and creative confidence to be a force for good in the global community. And how inspiring it is to be in a room full of students who represent that mission and also hold us accountable to ensure that what we do is live that mission here in the college. Today, we celebrate high-impact Black entrepreneurs, hearing from and learning with the many different voices at the table. And I can't help but think that while we celebrate the diversity and inclusion in Resetting the Room, truly our work is just only beginning. To reset or redesign or reimagine, or quite frankly, fix what is broken, requires us to engage in discovery and action. What does our collective space need to look like, feel like? What kind of changes can we make together? How can our own creative confidence and moral courage lead us to new strategies and opportunities and ways of coming together to make a positive impact on our communities and growing an economy that leaves no one behind? LMU's Business School is a prime institution. That is, we are a signatory to the principles of responsible management, and we ascribe to and support the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And those goals touch 17 key global issues. But of particular interest and germane to what we're going to be dialoguing around this evening are the goals that highlight such important issues as gender equality, sustainable cities and communities, poverty reduction, food security, peace and justice in organizations, and reduced inequality. I firmly believe, not only as a business dean, but as a member of that global community, that our business leaders and entrepreneurs hold the key to making an impact on these goals, and more generally making a difference and living a motto of business as a force for good to bring about systemic change. Earlier this morning, I was part of a roundtable of women business deans in a global network, and one of my colleagues at the table was talking about the kinds of students she hopes to recruit and the leaders she hopes to shape. She referred to them as IOTA, IOTA, capturing the characteristics and behaviors that demonstrate an independence of thought and action. Well, IOTA is a wonderful way to characterize the slate of leaders we'll hear from shortly. Leaders who commit to thought and action, who stand up, who break down barriers, who share their voices. These are men and women who inspire and lead in meaningful ways. And as we hear from our guest leaders today, and we have time together tonight to build connections and build community and engage in this important dialogue, it is my fervent hope that we all walk away not only inspired by another great event, but more importantly, to walk away committed to doing the hard stuff, being IOTA. We have to leave motivated to bring about changes that repair broken communities. It is time to reset the room and be change makers. Dr. Martin Luther King once shared that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Or in the words of Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So I'd like to end by thanking our business students, Christian and Des, the founders of Brothers of Consciousness, and all of the other students in the room for being here. And thank you to all the entrepreneurs who are about to meet. We look forward to learning from you, hearing your voices, and applying the lessons from your stories of grit and resilience as we all together commit to reset the room. Back to you, Christian.
Thank you very much for the words, Dean Smith. And with that, I'll hand it off to the leader of our LMU's Institute of Business and Ethics and Sustainability, Professor Tees.
Thank you so much, Christian. My name is Jeff Thies, the director of the Institute for Business Ethics and Sustainability. And as an institute, we provide a platform to really examine, explore, and hold up the intersection of opportunity and impact, recognizing that where there is success that advances what it means to be responsible socially and ecologically, advances our shared responsibility and really the context for opportunity. As Dean Smith said, we understand this through the lens of the Sustainable Development Goals, which really means in one simple phrase that no one gets left behind. We're honored to work with our student leaders, Brothers of Consciousness, and really celebrate this evening and support it as co-sponsors. And now, thank you so much again, and back to Christian.
Thank you, Professor Tees, and thank you for your leadership in sparking this initiative. Before we dive into our amazing panel of storytellers that I know we're all itching to get to, I'd like to take a few minutes to break down the context of why we're all here, really. As I mentioned in our welcome, I'm the co-president of the Black Male Leadership Organization on campus, Brothers of Consciousness. Since taking over the program, Desmond and myself has made it a key focus to build networks for our members because we realize that the individual is more resilient and more successful in direct relation to the strength of their village. My participation in organizing this event tonight is a direct focus on that mission. Tonight's event is a direct follow-up to an amazing evening we held last month, as we hope to turn Reset the Room into a semesterly event, focusing on a different topic with each gathering. We could not be more excited about the group of storytellers we've somehow managed to get together despite the busyness of this time of year. And I'm serious when I say it is busy. The stories shared this evening will not only be heard by you all tonight, but will be shared with students throughout the university and LMU's amazing programs, such as our Marketing A-List and M-School programs, and our Entrepreneurial Incubator, not to mention the institutions outside of LMU with which we work alongside. But enough about that. Let's talk about the run of show we've got organized for you this evening. As showcased, the 8 speakers we have tonight are absolute standouts. From the bottom left up, we have Christiana, Paul, Taj, Reginald, Jamal, Ruben, Bianca, and Brianna. As for the flow of the event, we'll first be hearing the 8 speakers recount their stories. Directly following, we will have a Q&A session. I will lead the Q&A session with the questions that you all have asked over the course of the evening. So send in your questions as they come to you, and we'll make sure to offer them up to the storytellers. And finally, we'll close with our virtual mixer presented by Mick Strauss. So without further ado, here are your BOC MCs for the evening: Brandon Frith, Desmond Hemmings, Miles Dement, and myself. So with that, I'll now hand it off to Brandon Frith. Brandon?
Thank you, Christian. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brandon Frith, and I'm a freshman at LMU. On campus, I'm a member of Brothers of Consciousness, and I'm the incoming Vice President of Venture for the LMU Line Investing Society. This afternoon, I'm really excited to hear from all of our speakers. To start us off, our first speaker is an award-winning LinkedIn marketing coach for business owners who don't want to spend a dime on advertisement. She is a former IT project manager and a CEO. Born and raised in a tight-knit Philadelphia community, she experienced firsthand the magic that transpires when people are brought together in the spirit of love, inclusion, and purpose. And she wanted people from all walks of life to know that same joy. This is when her company, Brick Rose Exchange, was born. On a quaint block in Baltimore's Canton neighborhood, Brick Rose's 3 versatile gathering rooms hold receptions, dinners, retreats, expos, art shows, and a host of other meaningful events. Her dream of creating a space where people from all walks of life came true through this business. And with this, please help me to welcome Bianca Jackson.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh man, where to start? Well, let me start with this. I'll share from what happened last night. So, if you can imagine standing in front of a mirror and really saying to yourself, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm 5'4", 135 pounds, a small fry, but with a big heart. And in that moment, as I was staring in the mirror, I said to myself, I don't know who's in there. My imagination ran wild. And so, just to kind of give you a little bit of background, in my event space, this is it right here. I actually live on top of it. I live on the second and third floor. And so, there's events and things that happen on the first floor. And so, in this particular, or what was happening last night as well as yesterday, someone booked the space for a completely different purpose for not an event. And so, as I saw multiple people walking in, I didn't know what to do, right? So again, I had no idea who was in there. My imagination raced wild. Were they playing cards? Were they drinking? Were they smoking? Were they dancing? I immediately felt fear. And the fear had to do with, I really didn't want to call the police. As we've been going through all the different things of just communities of color, I had to think, I'm a Black owned business in a predominantly white neighborhood with Black patrons, and anything could go wrong, anything could happen. We can make the 8 o'clock news. And so I didn't want to get hurt. I didn't want them to get hurt. And it was all these different decisions and things that I had to think about of what would happen if I did X, Y, and Z. And another thought that I had was, I'm a lover. I'm not a fighter. I haven't fought since I was 12, right? And so, when my friend punched me in the stomach and knocked the wind out of me. So these were all the feelings that I was feeling last night as I had to figure out what to do, right? So there was a mix of uncertainty. It was a mix of analyzing options of, what's the right thing to do? What's the safest thing to do? What's the fastest thing to do? There was processing of fear, because like I said, I'm not that big. And so I was here alone and trying to figure out what to do. And these were the thoughts that I had in my mind as I processed one of the most dangerous situations that I've had to come in contact with, of how to address, right? And so, as Brandon shared, I opened the space based off love, based off compassion, based off art, community, and just bringing people together. And now I was faced with a situation that I never imagined having to deal with. Now, I got to tell you where it got started, right? So the reason for wanting to put this space together, I had spent maybe about 14 to 15 years in corporate America as an IT project manager. And it wasn't about what the world was missing. It wasn't about what the world had. It was about what the world was missing. I felt like there needed to be a place where people can come together and actually be able to understand each other. So you start with this very pure intent of creating a loving, peaceful, and harmonious space, and now dealing with a very dangerous situation, right? And so all I really wanted to do was to highlight art, highlight culture, and just bring people together from all walks of life, right? And so as I contemplated the different options on how to solve this problem, this is where the power of community comes in. I have a really good friend who came, I called her, and she came down. She said, Bianca, we have to call the police. And I said, okay. And reluctantly, we waited for the police. And luckily, everything dissolved itself really fast, very straight to the point. As soon as we showed up, everyone started to disperse and they started to clean up, and they left with no problem, no incident. No one got hurt. Everything was fine. And as we stood there and we listened to the commentary that the patrons, because they didn't know what was going on. It was only the host organizer knew that she booked the space illegally, but the people didn't know. So they just assumed that, unfortunately, and I'll just be really transparent, that white people did not want them in their neighborhood. and trying to explain it to them, but not incite any disruption, not inciting any disruption, it was really important that, one, I protected the space, I protected the people in the space, and also just make sure that we got out of this with no incident. So we were able to wrap up the night and close it down. And then I immediately went into this place of, am I doing the right thing? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? There was this doubt, there was fear. And I think a lot of times when people convince themselves to start businesses, there's a lot of that, right? People tell you to be resilient. But I want to tell you, and for everyone who's listening, yes, be resilient, but also be anti-fragile. And the idea of that is, resiliency to me means when you face an issue, you have space and opportunity to feel bad about it, or to feel like you did something wrong. And I want to challenge you to be anti-fragile. Whereas you run into stressors and things unexpectedly that happen, and you just say, you know what, I'm just going to move forward. This has nothing to do with me. I'm going to, make sure that everything that I put into this place will be what it's supposed to be. And so I'll just finish with a couple of few points. I want to say that you never fail unless you quit. I almost failed. I almost didn't call the police, and the situation could have blown out of proportion. Another point that I want to make sure that I put out there is that when we don't value who we are and what we have, we allow ourselves, or we become susceptible to things that we have no business being susceptible to. So in that moment with COVID, as you can imagine, with any brick and mortar location, they've been facing, in any business, right? They've been facing just different opportunities or downfalls with revenue. And so they booked this space to sleep in, and they wound up turning it into a whole party. And so I could have avoided the whole situation if that wasn't even an option. And then the last thing that I want to say is that we should never take on how people choose to show up in the world as our responsibility. Whereas this individual used the space unlawfully, and I started to blame myself like it was my fault. And I had to realize that sometimes people just do what they want to do, and it's all about how we respond. So I just want to say that for anyone who's listening, be always courageous. Don't take other people's faults on as your own. And even sometimes when you have to do things that you don't want to do, just try to make sure that you think about all the potential ways to make it turn out as best as you can. So I am Bianca Jackson, CEO of Brick Rose Exchange. And I'm here to fight another day to bring art and to bring culture and people together in a way that's very loving and connecting. So thank you.
Thank you, Bianca, for sharing those meaningful stories. Something really inspiring from last night. And we also really appreciate those words of advice for us. I would like to say that we all appreciate it. And so for our next speaker, this woman is the CEO of Try My Fab, an Atlanta-based beauty tech company focused on going and being naturally curly as easy as possible. Her journey began back in 2007 after struggling with curl care for years and realizing that many others were having the same problem. She set out to find a way to make going and being natural as effortless as possible. So Try My Fab was born. They're building an app that in real time takes a user's preferences, hair characteristics, and a bit of tech magic to work to guide users through the process of building and ultimately maintaining an effective regimen. But it doesn't stop here. In addition to being a founder, she has worked in tech for over 10 years. Currently, she leads ZipRecruiter's partnerships platform product. She is the former head of business development at Calendly and former head of strategic partnerships and integrations at Mailtrip. It is my pleasure to introduce Christiana Oyedeji.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And it's kind of humbling to hear all that stuff said back to me. But it is awesome to be here. Thank you so much, everyone. As was stated, I'm the CEO of Try My Fab, and over a decade ago. I started that journey by shaving off all my hair. And I'm sure a few of you have had that same experience. See some naturalistas out there. But yeah, I shaved my hair out of sheer frustration and wanted to solve a problem at the end of the day. And was able to do that with Try My Fab. And so with all of this tech background behind me, I also have a neuroscience degree. I was like, next thing we need to do, let's go raise some money. Let's raise some money. So I started applying for a lot of accelerators. I had an MVP that I built myself. I was super proud. I had some customers going through it, and I got rejected from every single accelerator that I applied to for probably 2 years. I even got into like final interviews for several of them, was asked to come back and interview again or apply again for some of them, and still didn't get selected. And I just didn't even think VC was even an option. So I wasn't even going to put myself in that situation. But as you can, like, through this entire process, I started feeling really dejected, feeling like the product that I'd built and that was really a part of me was worthless, and that no one really cared, and that it was just time to shutter the doors and just go back to working full time. But that wasn't the plan that was, I guess, laid out for me. And so I said, you know what, let me try one more time. I tried one more time. I applied for a pre-accelerator this time. So I said, maybe there's something I need to learn. And also at the time, I was battling with a lot of anxiety in just the day-to-day grind of the tech world. It is fast-paced, as you heard. I was in a lot of very fast growth environments with a lot of people that did not look like me and didn't think that I could do it. And so the stress of that, coupled with trying to run a small business on the side or a startup on the side, which, you know, only in your 20s do you think that you can do stuff like that for a long period of time. I was battling with a lot of inner turmoil. And so this program, I quickly realized that it was exactly what I needed at the right time. I was able to work through that anxiety with an amazing group of people that still support me to this day. We share resources, and it's actually because of these folks that I was able to win a grant earlier this year, and was introduced to some VCs who are very interested, that we're now kind of having conversations about larger sums of money that might be invested. And these are things that I'm not even having to chase after. These things came to me through this community. And it's been an amazing experience. So the one thing I would say, if you're an entrepreneur wanting to do this thing, is it is hard. Raising money is hard, building a company is hard, scaling a company is hard, managing people is hard. You can't do it by yourself, and you don't need to do it by yourself. Just ask for help and find yourself a tribe, because they'll have your back and you'll have theirs, and you guys will always go faster and longer. You'll go a longer distance together. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you guys.
Thank you, Christiana, for also sharing some valuable words of advice and ultimately how you overcame some challenges. And so now I'll pass it over to Des, who will continue to introduce our guest speakers.
Thanks, Brandon. Hey, everyone. My name is Desmond Hemmons. I'm a finance student at LMU. I'm happily and humbly co-president of Brothers of Consciousness. I'm with Christian. I also work with Brandon on the venture side for the Lions Investment Society, and I'm part of the Real Estate Development Society as well. But yeah, I would like to just thank you to the previous speakers. Our next speaker hails from Dallas, Texas. Taj Ahmad Eldridge started his career in corporate banking with Wells Fargo, eventually serving as chief economist at TRW Investments right here in LA. In 2013, Eldridge created an online delivery fashion brand, WBA, and served as its COO until 2015. Around the same time, he became director of Excite, a center for in, intervention technology and entrepreneurship, working with the city of Riverside, and took on the role of senior director of investments for the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator to help create green economy tech jobs in California. Now he's preparing to launch full-time into his new role as GP and co-founder of his new fund, Include Ventures, in May. Let's welcome Taj Ahmad Eldridge.
Desmond, thank you. And thank you for the bells ringing for my entrance, man. I appreciate that. So I'm Taj Eldridge. My pathway to venture as a VC was quite interesting. I wanted to be a rapper when I was younger, and I actually put out an album. So shout out, if you can find that album, I'll pay you some money. But my parents were like, yeah, you're still going to go to college. So I thought I was doing well and said, I'm going to study poetry and literature, because if I'm going to be a great rapper, I should know literature and poetry. But needless to say, when I graduated, I did not pursue a career in music, but I did have a career of storytelling. And I understood the facets of that everything that we buy, everything that we use, everything that we have a relationship with is built around a story, from family to religion to nationality and everything else. So as Desmond said, spent a decade of my career in Wells Fargo, going from consumer banking to corporate banking. When I grow up, and actually he said I grew up in Dallas, Texas, in a place called Oak Cliff, where you have two pathways: either you're in sports or you do another career. And there's a rap song that says you either have a wicked jump shop or you sell something else. And for me, I decided that, venture was a space for me because I read this book by a gentleman by the name of Reginald F. Lewis. Reginald F. Lewis wrote this book about his experiences in private equity. And it was my first time really being introduced to the industry and private equity itself. And Reginald F. Lewis died before I graduated. But he had such an impact on me that when I often think about mentorship, and a lot of people always ask for mentors, he was a mentor of me who never even met me before, nor did I meet him. His mentorship for me was his actions, and his actions showed me the pathway. I ended up pledging the same fraternity as he did, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, and I ended up going to business school, going to Pepperdine for my MBA, and as Desmond mentioned, the PhD program at Claremont for geopolitical economics. The interesting thing about that is because I had this background in poetry and literature, because I had this background in storytelling, I was not like the other economists that was there. And consequently, when I became an investor and the founder, I was not like the other investors there. I certainly don't look like them. And I think that's what we have to think about when we're going into these careers. Forge your own pathway, and authenticity is what you need to do that's going to set you apart. As an investor, I always say I provide the 4 C's for people. The 4 C's are capital, customers, connections, and culture. That's more than just what most people think of VC provides, which is a check. If you're only providing the check, anybody can replace you. Similar to that, if you're a lawyer and you're only providing the law, you can be replaced. But if you add other value in what you're doing, as a lawyer, as a VC, as a founder, anything, that's when you provide real value, and that's when you will be valuable as well. So my pathway to this point, was a lot of twists and turns, a lot of ups and downs as a founder. And everything was not a win. But I'll leave you with this. We talk about L's and people taking L's in their lives and taking L's in business and everything else. For me, I had a lot of failures as a founder, some failures as an investor, but I didn't look at those L's as losses. I look at those L's as learning opportunities, because the next time I was in that position, I excelled. So that's why I think the story for me that I want to take away is that the pathway to wherever you want to be leads to your purpose, and use all of your experiences, everything within you, and be authentic when you do it. So that way they can see who you are. So Desmond, it was a pleasure. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Taj. Truly a great storyteller. I think I took away a lot about the value of mentorship that you spoke on, owning your story and being authentic. And then at the end, never making the same mistake twice. But with that, I'd like to transition to our next speaker. Our next speaker is a local legend, a champion, Olympian, and entrepreneur. Please join me in welcoming Jamal Hill. Hill is a champion American Paralympic swimmer. He was diagnosed with Charcot-Marie Tooth And as he puts it, he has used his condition as a form of empowerment instead of impairment. As of now, heading into the Tokyo 2021 Paralympic Games, Jamal is ranked #1 in the nation for several individual events. Jamal also uses his platform to reach out to others. So naturally, he's the president and founder of the Swim Uphill Foundation, which has a mission to teach 1 million people to swim and to inspire millions more through underdeserved community building and tech integration. Please join me in welcoming Jamal Hill.
Thank you so much, Desmond. That was a wonderful introduction. Oh, I got the real widescreen on for you guys here. Let me tilt it a little bit. New webcam, man. Great HD quality, but you can see way too much. Okay, so everybody ignore the door hinge to my right. Really glad to be here. As Desmond said, I don't know if I'm allowed to call myself a local legend. Let me move this mic out the way. I don't know if I'm allowed to call myself a local legend, but I definitely grew up in Los Angeles and, very familiar with Loyola Marymount. Actually, as a child, a lot of people don't know this, I swam at Loyola Marymount, not on the college team, obviously, but just my local YMCA. We practiced there in the summers. So beautiful campus. You all really have a great opportunity next year or last year, to be on campus. So that's amazing. We'll jump right into it. I'm rocking the brand right here, Swim Uphill. It's pretty crazy, Can we there's 77 people here. Can we do something real quick? You guys are good with the chats. Who can swim? Can we just get can we get a yes or no to who can swim? Obviously the people on video can put up your hands. If you can swim, put your hand up. If you can swim in the chat, right? Okay. If you can swim in the chat, okay, that's good. That's good. We got a good turnout. Second question I have is, who here has ever almost drowned? Who here has ever almost drowned? Okay, a lot of people who can swim are saying I've almost drowned too. Here we go. This is the one that usually takes the cake. Who here either knows someone personally or in their life has heard of someone who has actually drowned? Right? That's probably everybody here. We've all heard of a drowning story, and it's very unfortunate. So, as a child, my mom never learned how to swim. So from day one, she said, this kid's gonna know how to swim. So I came up 10 months old, mommy and me. I'm in swim lessons, rode that wave on through to swim team all the way up until I was 10 years old. And when I was 10 years old, I was diagnosed with a type of neuropathy called Charcot-Marie-Tooth. Essentially what that did is it left me in a state of paralysis. I was admitted into the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, and I stayed there for 3 weeks. Okay, so just imagine 10-year-old kid, funny guy. I can talk, I can move my head, but I couldn't move my arms, I couldn't move my legs. Fortunately, over time, some of that functionality started to come back. And so today I live in a state where from my elbows to my fingertips, I've retained about 30% nerve capacity. So we got a lot of young people here. I definitely don't text in bed with my phone over my face because I will drop it and that will not be fun. And then from my knees to the soles of my feet, I have 0% nerve capacity. So that's just a little bit of background. When we talk about struggle, when we talk about perseverance in business, I think it all starts with the individual. What you believe about yourself or don't believe about yourself is usually going to be, where the wealth and riches are either made or lost. So that was me up until 10 years old. I got back into swimming as a high schooler, went to a small college, swam there, ended up dropping out of that college to become a pro swimmer. It's paying off, but I am officially enrolled back in college this year. So we can all go ahead and clap it up for Jamal on that one. Thank you so much. I wish I could hear you, but I can see you. So I'm actually really excited about that. I never thought I would be excited to go back to school, but I am. So that's a great thing. And either way, when I made my first Paralympic swimming team in 2018, as Desmond so eloquently put, I am #1 in the nation right now, currently ranked #6 in the entire world, okay? I knew that I wanted to offer the world something more than just seeing a smiling face with medals around my neck. You know, you can see Muhammad Ali behind me here, right? So, you know, as Taj said before me, those mentors that we never met but have guided so much of our life, right? Muhammad Ali for me, Malcolm X, LeBron James. Somebody bought that same poster. Yeah, this is a great one. Believe real quick, this man didn't know how to swim when they took this photo. I don't know if he ever learned how to swim, but this photo, he did not know how to swim. So that's just a little trivia for you there. Either way, I knew that, you know, when I made this team, I was going to win a lot of medals, but I wanted to offer more to not only my community, not only my family, but the world at large, than just, again, you know, a smiling face. And so I set out at that time, I'm like, you know, we're going to teach 1 million people how to swim. And, you know, as those hands went up around the room during those initial 3 questions, it might interest you to know that 79% of families with an income of $50,000 or less have little to no swimmability, right? So that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. The average income for most, you know, I'm not the most PC, so forgive me here. But for most people of color in the United States, is right around $40,000. So that just kind of breeds into these stereotypes of not only do Black people not swim, or Hispanics or Asians not swim, but really just poor people don't swim. Poor people don't have access to life-saving skills and to skills that ultimately just open up new avenues for upward mobility and, you know, a greater quality of life and experience. So I knew that's what I wanted to dedicate myself to. If you have, okay, sorry, the chat is popping up and throwing me off. You know, so I knew that's what I wanted to dedicate myself to. And so, you know, for me in the past, I'd been a lifeguard for years, and it was really just going to be a matter of how do we solve this problem, right? Like, you guys are in business school, and everybody, right? It's you got to find a problem, you got to solve it. And everybody speaks about it in the sense of, you got to solve it so you can make your $1 million, and you can say, peace, I'm out. Like, I did it. You guys need to come buy my bucket to find out how I did it. Say less. For me, and my belief is that, you know, it has to be for a purpose, not for a profit. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously we all need to eat, right? The world costs money. You gotta take care of your kids. I like to have nice clothes. Trust me, I just took off a suit because my suit is not branded, so I wanted to have the Swim Uphill t-shirt on for you guys, keep it a little informal. But money is important at the same pace. When we're talking about service, when we're talking about fulfillment, personally, I operate from a purpose point of view. That led me to found my nonprofit, which I call a for-purpose business, not a nonprofit, because we do make money. We do help people with the money that we make. So it's a for-purpose 501c3 organization called the Swim Uphill Foundation. And some of the amazing things that I think really set our business apart in the space, and, you know, you guys can all appreciate this, is number one thing that we identified were pretty much the 4 primary limiting factors for individuals of low to middle incomes around the world when it comes to swim education. Number 1 is going to be, a lot of these communities have generational trauma surrounding water. Number 2 is going to be, a lot of them lack consistent access to calm bodies of water, aka a pool or some type of reservoir. Number 3 is going to be a lack of access to professional coaches. And then number 4 is ultimately going to be, there was a long learning curve in LA City, for example. It was taking lifeguards anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to teach children how to swim. That's the whole summer. So it doesn't take a mathematician to understand how limited capacity of service you would have if your entire program, you can only work with a certain cohort. The system that we developed pretty much addressed those 4 areas. All of our students on a 5-hour curriculum base, you know, we address their fears of water through psychosensory healing. That usually tends to be more relevant for adults 18 and over. And then from there, using a bowl, literally, you're hearing me right. You're literally using a bowl of water, a couple of buckets, and a bench. We begin to teach them how to properly breathe, the rudiment, the elementary stroke pattern for a breaststroke. There are standards associated with that. We have an online virtual course that uses like cardboard VR technology. Even poor families in America, most of them have smartphones at this time, you know, so like we use cardboard VR technology. We have a partnership with YouTube. And so we're able to put people in a pool in first person while they're not in the pool. And they can like have those skills that they've gained reinforced. And ultimately, once a month, we have an event in person where people who have passed this online course and have checked in with us online, they come to the pool, and then within 1 to 2 hours, they know how to swim. So that is, you know, pretty much that's our goal. That's what we're doing. And I think I'll just close it with this. I tell my staff all the time, listen, we're McDonald's. You know, we are McDonald's. We're here to serve millions and hopefully one day billions around the world. And with that, you really got to understand, what is your business model? For us, we definitely provide our services in-house. However, the primary leg of our service is through a licensing model, which allows us to pretty much control the initial 3 hours of the class and then to certify people in the swim uphill method all around the nation: Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Houston, Dallas. I remember somebody said Dallas. And then they can then run their one-day events and get people swimming just like that. And that all feeds back into our million people learning how to swim. So, you know, that's just a little snapshot about me, Jamal Hill, and, you know, what gets me activated, what gets me going. Really excited to hear about the rest of the speakers and those who have already spoke. God bless you. And let's go LMU, you know?
Yeah, thank you for that story, Jamal. Sharing your journey and taking your passion to help other people. I'm not sure if everyone on the call knows, but that's really like a Jesuit value. LMU is a Jesuit school, really being a person for others, and as well as succeeding in your own right. And just in case we don't see you until then, good luck with the Olympics. And I think with that, I'm passing it to Dr. DeMello.
Hey, thanks, Des. It's good to see you all. I'm here in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and this is the second Reset the Room event. Last month, we kicked it off, and I want to just, in this break, in this intermission that we have, I want to tell you a little bit about our entrepreneurship program. But before I get into that, I also, you can see all the instruments behind me. I play music, I play in a band, but today I'm running the merch table. All right, so you go to a concert and there's always somebody running the merch table. And so I want to tell you about some great merchandise that I highly recommend you pick up. If you guys can see my screen. We launched a campaign last month with a company called Represent, and with artwork designed by Brothers of Consciousness. Christian and his team created some incredible merch, and with the intention that we want this event to be a full circle, right? We're celebrating Black entrepreneurship. We've got amazing entrepreneurs sharing stories, not pitching their companies like we typically do with entrepreneurship events. Today is all about storytelling, and it's about building empathy. It's about learning from one another, and it's about giving a platform and building community and a tie to just understand that other people are going through what you might be going through or have gone through that, and to give a little bit of hope and build community resilience. So to tie the loose ends of the event, all of the sales from the merch campaign, the proceeds, Brothers of Consciousness have decided to donate it to I Fund Women. And they'll be making donations to support more Black female entrepreneurs. And so everything that you buy off this site, which I'll put the link in the chat, will go to a good cause and will help us make a little bit of an impact from the LMU community. So thank you, Christian, Des, for taking the leadership on this. And I also want to thank one of our alums who's in the audience. Robert Tisdale is from our executive MBA program, and he really made this whole campaign possible. You know, and he runs a business called Marketing Asset Control, and he really came to us with this wonderful idea to tie merch and social media campaigns to really bring an impact to a good cause. So anyway, that's my quick commercial to help sell some product, and check it out and make a couple orders. It makes a great Mother's Day gift or any other holidays that are coming up. And then the second thing that I want to tell you about is our Entrepreneurship Center. The Fred Kiesner Center for Entrepreneurship is one of the oldest programs in the country. Fred Kiesner started teaching entrepreneurship in college back in like the late 60s, early 70s. All right, and he's a legend. He's the reason I became a professor. I was a student of his, and I was going down a different path, and I met him, and I was at LMU as a graduate student, and because of that experience, I completely changed directions. I moved to Louisville, Kentucky, speak of Muhammad Ali, and I spent 4 years there learning how to become a professor. And I came back, and I'm just blessed to be a part of this program here. And last night, we celebrated the program with our incubator showcase, which celebrated 10 companies that have been incubated and launched out of LMU. It's been my pleasure to support these companies over the last 3 months as the professor in the class, but we also had generous alums who donated $50,000 to support the program and to give startup capital to help them get the legal expenses and buy manufacturing time and build prototypes and all the things that you have to do early on in a business, right? So our program is very hands-on, it's action oriented, and we teach classes all across the board for startups, for how to buy existing businesses. We run Startup Weekend. We have pitch contests. It's an amazing program. So for the entrepreneurship students or any students that are out there in the audience, please get involved. Reach out to Dr. Choi, who's become our new Hilton chair. And we have Darlene Fukuji also in the audience, who's the associate director of the center. And we would just love to have all of you involved. And then for all of our guests from outside of LMU, I said this in the chat earlier, but we really consider this a village. And we talked about how important it is to have a support system, right? And we saw that last night with the incubator showcase and the way people showed up. So my invitation to everybody on this call is that you are part of our village. By being part of Reset the Room, you're part of our entrepreneurship program. We're here to support you. We're here to help your businesses out. We're here to connect you with our students as mentors and do projects and all sorts of opportunities. So we'd love to have, we have about 300 students that are entrepreneurship majors at LMU, and the program is growing, it's thriving, and it's just a blast to be a part of. And I get to hang out with guys like Christian and Des and do fun things like what we're doing tonight. So anyway, thank you all. I'm gonna pass the mic back to Christian.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mellon. I don't think any of us could have plugged and talked about the Represent and Reset the Room campaign is better than that. So thank you. And for everyone who's wondering about the incubator showcase that happened last night, there's some people in here right now in the audience that have some pretty amazing companies. So if you want to send those links in the chat, everybody, go ahead. So with that, I'd like to hand it off to our third BOC MC of the night. He's taken a good amount of time to come out and work with us all tonight. So let's give a large round of applause, virtually, of course, to Miles Dement.
All right, thank you so much, Christian, for that introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Miles Dement. I'm a film production major, soon to be screenwriting minor. I'm currently zooming in from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Yes, there are Black people in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Make sure you come visit. As far as extracurriculars, I am serving this year as the marketing chair for the Black Student Union on campus. And we recently had elections, so I'll be serving again as marketing chair for next year. So I'm super excited to see how I get to, exercise my talents and continue serving my Black community in person next year. So first off, I have the pleasure and privilege of introducing our next speaker. Her name is Brianna Harrelson. She is the founder and CEO of Breeze Dance Place and Brianna Harrelson LLC. At the age of 7, she choreographed her first talent show at Henry P. Fieldler Elementary School in Merrillville, Indiana, and has only grown in talent, devotion, and drive ever since. Harrelson is dedicated to helping minority and women-owned small businesses find and secure grants, resulting in joyful profits and entrepreneurs being able to create the life that they desire. Harrelson is a graduate of the Howard University, achieving her bachelor's of business administration with a concentration in marketing, as well as a dance minor in 2012. Introducing Brianna Harrelson.
Thanks so much, Miles, for that awesome introduction. And my theme for tonight is pressure produces purpose fulfillment. So Taj talked about it, Jamal talked about it. We're going to talk about purpose. And in the road of entrepreneurship, for me, nothing has come easy. I don't know who's an entrepreneur where anything has come easy, but even in going to Howard, so, you know, dancing since the age of 7, you think, okay, I'm gonna be a dance major. No, I didn't make it into the program as a dance major. So instead I, you know, took what I knew, which was business, and then I reapplied as a dance minor. So even in that, it's like that pressure of feeling like, you know, you have these questions, am I a good enough dancer? But I actually found out that I should go into education as it relates to dance, right? So graduating from Howard, I went into corporate America. So I worked for IBM for about 5 years as a consultant, and I loved it because that was that logical side of my brain working that. But I always taught dance, and like Jamal was saying, like you can really say, what am I doing? Like, how am I impacting the next generation of people? And that's what I was doing. Like, even though I was a consultant and I was traveling Monday through Thursday, on the weekends, I was still like donating dance, like dance in the community, dance in the church. However I could teach people, I was teaching because that was my outlet as a child. We couldn't afford studio classes. So my parents, you know, put me in the community. I was taught by the streets, you know, BET, Aaliyah, Missy Elliott, they all helped me train and dance, primarily hip hop, because I'm right here in Gary, Indiana is where I live, but my studio's in Maryville. So fast forward, I'm laid off at 3 months pregnant from IBM, right? And that's not even ideal for me because I knew that eventually I would open a dance studio, but I didn't think it was gonna be that quick. So I'm laid off at 3 months pregnant, but I'm still teaching dance and inspiring other moms to stay active throughout their pregnancy. So what do? I become creative and I use that pressure of not having that income anymore from IBM, and I go and start pregnancy and new mom dance classes. So even at 6 months pregnant with my first son, we did a 7-city tour across the United States, going to Atlanta, DC, we went to LA, all across the country, just hosting pregnancy dance classes. And this low impact movement is really bringing community together. And it was just great. But then after that, it's like in entrepreneurship, you have ebbs and flows. Like I thought, okay, this thing is gonna pop. We're gonna have virtual classes. That was in 2018. So we didn't have a pandemic where everything was virtual now. People were still looking for like that in-person touch and feel. And I got to the point where I wanted to walk away from dance. Has anybody ever gotten to the point where they just wanted to quit, even though you know you're supposed to be an entrepreneur, you know you're supposed to, you know, be a part of something? If you've wanted to quit before, put that in the chat for me, because I wanted to quit, and it probably didn't help that, you know, we had built a lifestyle on 2 incomes. So my husband at that time was sending me job, you know, like Indeed, like you need to apply, girl, because we got a house, we got a baby, we got bills, and you over here trying to fulfill this dream. So I was really like ready to go back to corporate America. I was even hired at BET in Chicago, even though I know like it wasn't my purpose. So eventually I got to the point with like the agreement of my mom, who was my best friend, like, okay, we're gonna open this dance studio, we're gonna do it. And I actually went to a trip. I was in California for a dance conference, and that's when I got the confirmation. And I came back home to Indiana, and I started looking for the space. I signed the lease on September 4th, 2019. And so this is why I know that pressure produces purpose fulfillment, because I'm ready now. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm going full force. It's going to be a full studio for children to adults, all of this. And within 2 weeks of me signing that lease, my mom, who was completely healthy, had a stroke. And it wasn't just any stroke, it was a massive stroke. And this was supposed to be my front desk person, my parent liaison. She had worked in the school system. So she just, you know, would be that person for me. And she had a stroke. I'm doing the build out on the dance studio. I'm a young wife. I have a 1-year-old son. And now I'm in rehab with my mom, sometimes 12 hours a day. So thank God that I had a supportive father who was there. We would switch off. And then I have 2 other siblings who are very supportive. So we would switch off. They would watch my son, and we got through that season. And I'm thinking, okay, she's going to come home and everything's going to be okay. But that wasn't the case. So she was in the hospital literally from September until she passed away in December. The studio had its grand opening in October, and we quickly grew to 50 students. And I had promised them a Christmas performance. My mom passed away on December 11th. The kids performed on December 23rd. And during that time, I had to decide. I could have walked away, and I could have said, you know, this is too much, it's too hard. But no, I chose to stand and be strong and use actually this situation to give me joy working with the children. They had their Christmas performance, and I looked at it from the perspective of my mom gave me everything that she could while she was on this earth. She was my best friend. She put me in dance. Even though she was in the hospital, she got a chance to see the grand opening, via FaceTime. She never got a chance to walk the dance studio. But I took her life and her love for life, and I embedded that and I fueled that into Breeze Dance Place. So we even started hosting like joy workshops to help people like overcome grief, because I could empathize with others. So that's October of 2019 that we opened, right? So you think you can't get any worse. Like, we're growing and we're at 75 students. And then what happens in 2020? The doggone pandemic. What is a pandemic and where does that come from, right? So the pandemic happened, and quickly those 75 students dropped to like 34 students. And it's like, okay, Brianna, what do you do? What do? You do what you can do. And that's why I say that pressure leads to purpose fulfillment, because that season of me dealing with everything with my mom, it almost like prepared me for the pandemic, where I just had a I can't quit personality. It was like something came over me, like that same I can't quit personality that came in when I was at Howard and I was a dance minor. I'm 21 years old, taking ballet, trying to be flexible, doing 21 credits. Like, you guys know in school, like that's a lot, working on all of that. That same oomph came in, and we pushed through that pandemic. We even got partnerships with organizations to do special needs dance classes. And I got smart. I'm like, okay, what skills do I have to get us through this, to buffer this? The same skills that I used to graduate from Howard debt-free, which was finding scholarships and applying to those. I started doing that with grants. And your girl got to writing. She got to writing for those grants, applying for those grants. And I can honestly say that our 2020 was better than our 2019, because I lost my mom, and that was big. That's my homie, that's my girl, I love her. So 2020, by November of 2020, we had over $50,000 in grants for Breeze Dance Place. That was able to, get us through that back rent that we owed, to help us pay off some of the startup costs of doing the build out on the studio. And we were growing. So now it's 2021 and we're at 88 students. Like, it's just been a blessing. I just found out today, keep it between us, don't tell anybody, we just received another grant that they'll announce on Monday. So pressure truly produces purpose fulfillment. Don't run from pressure. Even if you're in a season where you don't know, what will I use this for? I use those 6 a.m. dance rehearsals before, going to class at Howard now, as discipline, as time management. I use, if you went to Howard, or if you know anybody who went to Howard, those days of wearing heels and walking up the hills at school, of, always being on it and looking well and presenting yourself well. In my presentation, when I work with parents, like, everything is for a reason. Even, being able to be pregnant and continue to dance, because I'm pregnant now, and just getting through those seasons. So don't ever look at any situation in your life like it's not for you to use in the future. And it's all about people, the way you work with people, the way you manage people, the way you love people, and then the profits will follow. And that's the story of Breeze Dance Place. And it's also helped with the my second business, because I help other entrepreneurs just find grants and apply for grants, because it's money out there for your business. But yeah, just stay resilient. Don't get bitter. I can say that I'm not bitter in losing my mom. I can empathize, especially with those who lost people during the pandemic. And I just found out today, one of my dancers, one of my students' mom passed away. So I can empathize with that. So use those emotions, feel those emotions, and add those into your business. And just thank you so much for this opportunity. Remember, pressure helps lead to purpose fulfillment. So don't run from pressure. It's okay. If all hell is breaking loose, that means that you're heading in the right direction. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you so much, Brianna. I really appreciate those encouraging words. Dance is such an incredible expression of, emotion and spirit and even Blackness, at times. So I think it's incredible what you've been able to achieve. And I think it's great what you're going to be able to achieve in the future. So thank you so much for speaking. So our next speaker is Paul Harris. He is a CEO and co-founder of the smart EV charging company, KIGT. Harris attended the School of Business and Economics at Sonoma State University and graduated from the University of Nevada, Los Angeles with a degree in business, management, marketing, and related support services in 2007. Incredibly, Harris is the Vice President of American Association of Blacks in Energy, the California chapter, which participates in the formation of local, state, and national energy initiatives, legislation, policies, and programs that impact African Americans. So without further ado, introducing Paul Harris.
Hey, thank you, Miles. So this is really cool to be here. Quick story. I used to party in college at LMU, so I'm familiar with the campus and the good people there. So big ups. I love how things come full circle. And then I just like to say big ups to everyone in the room. You know, last year was a tumultuous year. In the history of our lifetimes, we've never seen anything like that. And if you're here today, you've made it out. And congrats to you, right? A lot of us had folks and family that didn't, as Brianna said, in love and good juju to those who did lose. But you guys are here. You guys have made it out. And I'm glad to be in the room with everyone. So I just appreciate you being here today, allowing me to speak and share my story. And so I would just like everyone to just real quick, just imagine a world where every morning where you wake up, you have a full tank. And then when you left campus, you still had a full tank. And then after you left happy hour, you still had a full tank. And then that car, when you went home, helped provide the lights and electricity for you to charge your phone and watch Netflix on. And it cost you less than $6 to do it. Yeah, right? That's what we do at Kidget. We bring that Jetson Autotopia to life. We help you guys live the future now and today. And the story I'm going to tell is how we became a little company and to actually installing and doing the largest project in the history of California for EV charging installations. And so what you see behind me is an example of our hard work after my 10 years of in the industry. And I'll kind of go into a little bit of the lessons I've learned over the years to help us get to this point as a team, because you don't reach this success without your tribe. And so for me, we always talk about it as a business in my long pandemic hair, right? You got to live the dream. And living the dream isn't necessarily the desired outcome that you want. The actual dream part is the journey, because imagine when you wake up and, you know, when you're sleeping, the dream is all the craziness. You're jumping off a cliff, you're flying, you're fighting bad guys and things like that. And then when you wake up, the dream is over. So when we say that as a group, we like to understand that the journey, the process, the ups, the downs, forward is living the dream, is part of it, right? And so one thing you must do and always have is a purpose. That's your true north. And then secondly, make sure that your imagination is your safe space and where you go to as your source to create when times get hard. And then rely on that, and you must believe in yourself. We know that for us, the belief in one another and our idea and the greater vision has helped us with our convictions and stay together and have success. And then you must learn. Professor DeMello talked about how he had to go back to school to learn something. And that is a continual process, and it doesn't end, students, when you finish up at LMU. Me personally, not to brag, but when our company wasn't having success, I read that the great CEOs read 65 books a year. So I was humble enough to then look at myself and see how many am I reading. You know, I had 12 on my mantle, but I was really finishing like 3 a year. You guys know how that goes. And so for me, then taking that step accelerated my personal growth, because you have to get better, and the success that you have is more so about the person you become along the journey. And then how many of you read The Alchemist? My favorite book I read once a year. You got to have faith. And the one thing I took away from The Alchemist, I was asked yesterday, what was your favorite part? And I said that it was that he never quit, that he had the faith to not quit. And they're like, was it the resilience? Was it this? I was like, at the end, the sum of it was he didn't quit. It was his faith in knowing he could be nimble and he can be flexible to not quit. And so I bring that up because my grandfather, who passed away 11 years ago, is the reason why I still have my company today, and partly. And so he was 95 when he passed. So that's a relationship I have, someone that would be over 100 years old. And so when you look at your future and your present, you do have to pull back from the past to help you learn. And so I want to give big ups to Tulsa because this is the 100th anniversary of Black Wall Street and what happened. And we are celebrating Black entrepreneurs. And that was a great example of what entrepreneurs can do amidst hate, amidst trouble, amidst racism, and still have success. And so I want to mention that because this is an example of this group of young entrepreneurs of what they wanted to become. And so in that, it was my connection with my grandfather in the past where he said, look, you have this business, you must continue. And I remember I had a choice. It was 2008, because I've been in the space since 2009 and 2010 before Teslas were driven. And I remember when my daughter was born, and slight correction, Miles, I didn't graduate UNLV. I was in school for about 4.5 years. I was there. I was a student athlete. I was Dean's List when I played hoops. But when I stopped playing, that's when my grades dropped. But I bring that up because I knew then that's entrepreneurship was the path. So I have my daughter while I'm in college. And then I have a decision because I'm in Vegas. My friends for me, we're celebrating. And then she's upstairs, sleep with her mom. She's a newborn. And I have a decision. Do I go have fun? Because they would never know. So I take a swig real quick. And then the next moment I remember I'm looking at Barack Obama on a screen. And he's debating Hillary Clinton on the highlights. And he's talking about how change is coming. And then I remember looking at my baby girl and telling her, look, me and you are going to be okay. She was 6 pounds, 1 pound. She had to go into incubator. I said, if he can make it through this, then me and you can make it. And fast forward now, she's like 5'8", 13-year-old, plays softball, straight A student. And fast forward to now, we've done the largest project in the history. And so what I would like to say is you got to find your gaps and your opportunities. On the way to getting to success, we did pilot projects with cities. We had proof of concept. We've done some innovative stuff over the years. And it was really cool. We were able to make electric cars power a third of a parking lot lights for the fleet of city of South El Monte. We've done these demonstrations. AC Propulsion was a partner of mine. I was sitting at Starbucks, learning, working on my idea of how I was going to change the world, and serendipity happens. What I like to say is you got to be in position for serendipity to happen. The only way that is if you're prepared and you hang out with other weirdos like you who are interested in what you like. I'm always going to trade shows. I'm always hanging out with people because, as you can imagine, the other entrepreneur said, often we're the only ones who look like us in our settings. And so for me, having friends and having other weirdos just keeps me in line and lets me know I'm on track. Because friends and family, you can imagine what they tell me. I mean, look at me, right? I was a collegiate athlete, and then now I'm doing charge stations. Cousins talking about what's a kidget? What's a kidget? What's a kidget? What's in you gonna take us on an electric rocket ship, huh? All this stuff. And then I said, hop in last year, come in my Tesla on this rocket ship. So all of that was buildup. So we do these cool projects with cities and we don't get the deal, man. So then we had to pivot. As you entrepreneurs, you must pivot. But the opportunity for EVs was too big for us to quit. So we made the pivot to being our own manufacturer of charging stations, offer something better to the market, offer something more affordable to our customers, offer more value. So we became a manufacturer. We built a stellar rock star team of people that have helped us. Taj was one of the first that kind of believed in us in the accelerator space. Like Christiana, I applied and didn't get in. So as we wanted to keep our chops, we became a small business. We got certified, getting small contracts with cities, small contracts with states, showing that we are awesome. We had our MVP and it helped us get some small deals with some schools. Then that helped us propel our business to now we're working with Southern California Edison. They had me speaking on stage, I'm part of committees, and we were just building and building. Then before you know it, we got into Clean Tech San Diego Incubator, Elemental Accelerator, the top accelerator in the world for climate tech businesses. And we just got into NYSERDA's climate tech program. I've pitched dozens of VCs. We're still not VC funded. And today I pitched a VC and he said, wait, you guys have all this business. You're at the San Diego Convention Center, University of Texas. You guys must have raised millions. I said, no. Being Black and brown, we know how to be resourceful. We know how to work together and make it happen and not quit. So now we're projected to earn $1 million this year. We have a meeting with Uber next week. We're projected to install over 1,000 chargers. We have bi-coastal manufacturing. And so for us, what I want to tell you guys always is to live your dream. Remember, it's the journey to process the ups, the downs, having a kid before you finish college, not finishing college, getting no's, right? And using small wins and failing forward to propel you to get better when you have to pivot. Be humble to do that, like Kendrick said. Know your purpose, use your imagination, believe in yourself and your team. Have the faith that learning will make you better. And before you know it, you'll have your results. And last and importantly, no no's and have your no-nos. Meaning no no's, get rejected. Let them tell you no. Know that feeling. And then have your no-nos where you won't compromise your integrity and your authenticity, your no-nos. And those things combined will allow you to become in position to be $1 billion value company with a team of people you love and grew it and still maintain ownership. And so I'd like to say thank you, everybody. And hopefully I see you in the future and we work together and we can reshape 100 years of human habit. Have a good one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paul. I really appreciate that. That was incredibly encouraging. Before we move on, I just wanted to offer a small apology for messing up your last name. I need a nap. It's Paul Francis, not Harris. Also, thank you so much for recognizing, the massacre as a resident of Tulsa and someone who has family who has been here for generations and generations. It's really nice seeing someone being able to recognize that on a national platform. And again, kudos to you for everything that you've accomplished. Clean energy is the future, and you being able to lead that venture is, incredible to witness. So with all that said, I will go ahead and pass that off to Christian.
Yeah, thank you very much, Miles, and to all of our past 6 speakers. We're almost to the tail end here, and I'll be introducing the very next 2. So I'll just get right into it. Originally from the ATL, our next speaker is making a name for himself not only up in the Bay, but nationwide. Beginning his career in tech after publishing a blog post that went absolutely viral about breaking into startups, he's since co-founded the company Career Karma, for which he's raised, and get this, over $10 million. Not 10,000, over $10 million. He's a true embodiment of the phrase serial entrepreneur and paying it forward, as he's led efforts related to food insecurity, climate change, and agriculture. He's an active member of the NAACP and has channeled his career efforts into helping others gain opportunities that they have for too long been excluded from. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to introduce to you, Ruben Harris.
What's going on, everybody? How you doing? Can you hear me? Awesome. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you all. From what I understand, we're going to be sharing mountains that we've had to climb. As I listen to Paul, there's like some tweaks to what I'm going to say, but I will, because I think what he shared was very important. I think it's important to highlight. Also, Brianna, I like what you shared as well, but I'll start with how I originally planned on speaking. So the title of what I'm going to be sharing is called Don't Climb the Right Hill. Don't climb the wrong hill. Don't climb the wrong hill. So when I was in college, I did a double major, business administration and music. It took me 5 years to graduate. I know Paul said 4.5. It took me 5 years to graduate. When I graduated, I had a 2.98 GPA. And when I was in college, the thing was, you get into investment banking or consulting, and if you do that for, 1 to 3 years, then you could do whatever you want for the exit opportunities. Long story short, I taught myself financial modeling. I sent out 1,900 emails. I crashed career fairs, and I got my first job as an investment banker in Chicago. I'm skipping a lot of things, but the reason why I'm skipping a lot of things is because I definitely know rejection. I never got in something the first time, but when I was in the investment banking world, you think that you made it, you're making all this money. I had a condo in Chicago and all these things. And I read a blog post by a venture capitalist named Chris Dixon. You guys know what a venture capitalist is? For the people that don't know what a venture capitalist is, it's somebody that gives money to entrepreneurs so they can start companies. And so he wrote a blog post called Climbing the Wrong Hill, okay? And essentially, it's a story of an investment banker that goes to a successful entrepreneur or venture capitalist and asks him for advice. And essentially, the successful person tells this individual that's an investment banker, like, what is your goal in life? And his goal is to like start a very successful company and blah blah blah, right? Achieve his purpose. And then his answer to him is like, why are you doing investment banking? Right? And so he says, imagine a hilly terrain, right? So pretend all of us are on a hilly terrain. It's a foggy terrain, and we're all naturally walking through life, right? So as you walk through life in a hilly terrain, you're naturally going to ascend certain hills. The thing is when you get to the top of a hill, and in this metaphor, it was investment banking, you see less fog, right? So the view is clearer. And what you realize is what you thought was the biggest hill that you could ever climb is actually not. And the biggest hill that you could ever climb is what I took away is something that we call Everest. My co-founders and I read this blog post and were like, what's the highest hill that you could ever climb, which is Everest, right? In the real world. So most of us are climbing these different hills. And the problem is like, if you want to climb Everest, what you actually have to do is climb down the mountain that you're currently on, and then climb back up a mountain, which is harder than anything else. And so what that meant is for my co-founder and I to start a company that was venture backed, we had to quit our jobs and relearn the game, right? Because the tech world had taken over finance, it had taken over consulting, and it's taken over the entire world. Like, I don't care what you guys want to do. You all work in the tech industry, including the professors on this call, right? The whole university system has to change. Like, healthcare got to change, finance got to change, energy got to change. So if you want to ride the wave versus getting hit by it, then you need to learn the game and readjust. Because these changes aren't just taking years to happen, they're happening in months and weeks. And 2 to 4 years is too long. And you can't just graduate and just be done learning. Like Paul said, you need to be reading 65 plus books per year, right? If you don't like reading, use audiobooks. If you don't like audiobooks, watch videos. But you have to always be learning no matter what you do. So long story short, when we quit our jobs, none of us knew how to code. And my co-founders and I decided, what are we going to do? And so one of our buddies quit the investment bank and popped up as a software engineer 3 months later. And we're like, how did he do that? It's pretty crazy how they did that. And he actually went to a boot camp. I don't know if you guys heard of a boot camp, but a boot camp is a 3-month or 3 to 12-month program that gets you a job in whatever field that you want to do. And so my co-founders decided that they were going to be the coders. And then I was going to be the CEO sales guy. So while they were learning how to code, I bought a one-way ticket to San Francisco without knowing anybody, and I had a place to live for a month. So I told you, I'm from, like Christian said, I'm from Atlanta. And my mother, I was like, Mom, I'm just check out at San Francisco. I don't know what's going to happen. I only got a month there. I'll be back. That was in 2014. I haven't been back. But like, going back to what Paul said about faith, if you're walking in your purpose, and if you have, I grew up in a church, so I'm gonna use a church analogy. If you have faith and you don't look down, you can walk on water, right? Using a Peter analogy, right? So like, I bought a one-way ticket, had a place to live for a month. 3 weeks later, I found a job, and I wrote a story about it called Breaking into Startups. Okay. And that story went viral, and all the venture capitalists started talking about it because the tech media only talked about CEOs and venture capitalists, but not the people that were actually building the companies. So I started carving out this like really cool niche. Like, why aren't we talking about the moms on the call, Brianna, right? Why aren't we calling about the dancers on the call, or the actors on the call, or the janitors on the call that like are building the future, right? And I didn't just talk about the pretty stories. I talked about the person that was homeless. I talked the person that was dealing drugs in the street. I talked about everything in TechCrunch. So it was like very, very, very different. But it hit home because, you know, it was the first time people weren't just like talking about diversity theater. You were speaking in somebody's language. All right. And so we wrote that story called Breaking into Startups. Then we wrote another story called The Reality of Breaking into Startups. The first product you build is yourself. And the reason why we wrote this story and named it Breaking into Startups is because to get into investment banking, I had to teach myself financial modeling through through a program called Breaking into Wall Street. And so I know I only got a few minutes left, but long story short, we took this energy of people reading our blog posts and our articles, and we created a podcast in 2016 called Breaking into Startups, where we actually started interviewing all these stories of other people that did it. And then schools started reaching out to us to pay for access to our audience. And we're like, wow, like one school wanted to pay us $5,000 a month. We're like, that's $60,000 a year. How many schools are out there? It's kind of crazy. Do trade schools have this problem? Do colleges have this? Wow, this is $1 billion. Like it's a more than $10 billion industry. Wow, that's kind of crazy. Wait, United States spends over $2 trillion a year on workforce development. Sorry about that. On workforce development. And so we figured out that this was a big market. And we created a chat bot that will point people to teaching programs for the jobs that they want. And then we realized that pointing people to teaching programs wasn't enough because a career transition is psychological. So we needed to create an app. We need to create a community. So we need to put these skills into practice. We need to take those investment banking skills and make presentations. And Christian mentioned we raised $10 million, but we actually raised $12 million in the last 2 years. In order to fuel this whole thing, we got into Y Combinator, which is the world's largest accelerator out there that's created companies like Airbnb and Stripe and Dropbox. And long story short, or long story, I would say that I know for sure that I'm doing what God put me on this earth to do. Right? There's a quote on my wall from Dr. Martin Luther King that says, when you know what you're supposed to do in this life, set out to do it as if God Almighty called you at this very moment in history to do it. And that's what I did. And what I know is that even though I feel like I started climbing this mountain in 2014, I'm still at base camp 1, and I have a long journey to go. And if I was going to put a bow on this whole thing, kind of like how Brianna talked about her purpose as being a dancer, but doing all these roundabout things, it's okay to do all these things, but eventually that thing that's true to you will come into play. So just stick to it. Make sure you have faith and don't climb the wrong hill.
Ruben, man, absolutely. Thank you for coming on and sharing your time today. I think there's a lot that we can learn from the importance of not just pivots in business or professional lives, but massive pivots to our personal lives. Making those leaps of faith can really be difficult because we can't see the other side, but they're most certainly worth it. I just have to say, for those who don't know, locking down Ruben for this event came along with my sitting in traffic for like an hour and a half with just the chance to meet him. And I think everyone in the audience can see that that was a well worth Hail Mary attempt. So thank you again for coming out.
And shout out to you, Christian. I do got to shout that out, man, because like Christian reminds me of me when I was trying to break into tech, because I did the same thing. Like he has those gut instincts. He's a very special guy. You all are blessed to have him. Everybody on this call I know is going to be great, but what he did is like amazing. And I have many stories where I've bought a one-way ticket to random places with just the hope to say what's up to somebody, and you got it in you, bro.
I appreciate that. I think I need to get a Tesla so I can use Paul's Kidgets, so I don't have to waste gas like that anymore. But let's hop into the next speaker, everybody, and he's gonna wrap us up this evening. And our next founder probably has a mind that rivals the combined intelligence of every single person on this webinar. Starting out with a degree from MIT, wherein he led student efforts in the support for Black lives right around the time of the Rodney King. He's continued through universities to gain his MBA and doctorate in engineering. After an extensive career in energy, he founded 510 Nano and Optimal Tech Corporation, the former being the first African-American utility-scale solar farm, and the latter an award-winning startup providing insights for solar facilities. So, without further ado, please give a large round of applause to our final speaker of the night, Dr. Reginald Parker.
Good evening, everyone. How's it going? Look, I want to tell you the story about doing the first African-American utility scale solar farm. It was in North Carolina. When I first started, I had to raise money, and folks told me, why are they gonna let you do that? So the first thing I had to realize or convince people is they're good enough. I'm good enough. It's not, why could I do it? Anybody can do it if you set your mind to it. And that was really the thing that I had to do, set my mind to it, because I went to 20 different counties. 19 told me no. The 20th told me yes. So it was about me having a vision and understanding of, I'm going to do a solar farm because I want to make sure that I do something that has legacy value, something that will change the world, make things better. And so I got to Northampton County, and I believe that was where I was supposed to actually start. It was the poorest county in North Carolina. And when we built it, I made sure that the folks there were hired at regular wages because I wanted it to have an economic impact. So we agreed on a land price of $20,000 for 21 acres of land, and that was a fair price for that land. They came back to me and said, well, we're not going to make the type of taxes that we wanted to make. So they raised the price to $850,000. The NAACP asked me, how are things going? I let them know what was going on, and we went back into a negotiation. One of the things I found out was the land, the interconnection was going to cost me $500,000. So I would have ended up with a $20,000 piece of land and $500 for interconnection on top of the cost of the solar farm. So that was an additional $520. So what I did was found out the city could get the interconnection for 10% of what I was going to pay, $50,000. So we agreed to a price of $200,000, and I would give them $50,000 for the interconnection. So it came out to $250,000. So it's actually slashed the prices. Second thing is that I learned is that tenacity is important. And the third thing, which is just as important, is that you have friends somewhere. It's not what you know. It's not who you know. It's not even who knows you. It's what are they willing to say in rooms that you're not in. And then the NAACP said things in rooms that I wasn't in, that I knew nothing about, that helped to make my deal go through. So when you meet people and you're walking past them and you introduce yourself and you make yourself aware, you'll never know that that may be the person who has saved your hide and you didn't know about it. So, my war story is I went through several different counties. And even with the county that I chose, I went through several different issues. I went through several different banks to get financing. And we're in year 7 on the solar farm. And now I'm selling it for a profit of $1.2 million. So the bottom line is that to be first is not easy, but it's worth doing. Because after that, many other solar farms came in North Carolina, especially with African Americans. Moreover, 3 years ago, hurricane hit that area really bad, took down everybody but my solar farm. So that area got electricity from the sun because of the work that we did together. So, and now what I'm doing is taking what I call better energy, solar, and mixing it with using energy better, AI, ML at the junction box to help lower even more electricity costs and helping to reduce waste. So hopefully from this story, you can be energized that a no doesn't mean no. So thank you, Christian. And I see my one of my partners, Taj Eldridge. And hey, Ruben, I see a lot of your emails, but thank you guys for having me. I just got finished pitching here in Montgomery, Alabama, and I made my way here to make sure I talk to you guys. So thank you.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you very much, Dr. Parker, and we're very glad to hear that the pitch earlier today went well, and thank you for making the time to make it over here. There's a lot to be said for being the pioneer in a lot of spaces. It's not easy, it's extremely difficult, but it can be very well rewarding for making that jump. I think it goes back to Ruben's point, making that leap of faith as well. So thank you again. That's a little recap there, and ladies and gentlemen, we are out of our speakers for the night. However, the fun is not done yet. We're gonna have a 15-minute Q&A session, 10 to 15-minute Q&A session here. And I'm just gonna offer up the questions that we've been sent directly towards each speaker. And if you have any questions as they answer, please feel 100% free to send those into the Q&A chat there, and we'll try to work them in and make sure we have enough time. So to start off, I think we had a question for Christiana. And the question really came down to, who is your village? We talked a lot about community and strength and numbers, and they wanted to know, who is your village?
So my village comprises of women women and other tech folks that are in the same space that I'm in the same, stage of development. There's some people that are a few stages ahead of me, and then people that are a few stages behind us. So we wanted to make sure that there's some diversity in that that group that's working together and supporting each other, because then we can all learn something from each other, even from the folks that are a few steps behind where I am. I can still learn something from them, and I can also give back to them as well. So without getting into the details of the actual people's names, but in addition to those entrepreneurs, we also extend our own networks. So I have a really deep, SaaS tech network. And so that network now becomes the network of my team, and I can advocate for them if there's something that might be, useful or helpful for them. And excuse the noise, I have a puppy in the background. But yeah, it's like a diversity of thought, extension of that network, and just making sure you think about other people whenever you're in those rooms. Like the last speaker was saying, that's been the most helpful.
I see we have one in the chat from our one and only Odu to Paul with the same question, who is your village?
Mentors were key. Mentors were key, man. So my first set, rest in peace, 2 people along the journey that have passed away were the first people to ever give me $1,000. One was like a godmom to me. The other one was my dad's best friend. They're the first people to believe in me, the first adults, really. And then my angel investors, they happen to own 16 McDonald's, and they're Black. And then next became Taj. So from there, leveraging those relationships and mentors. And then I got to give big ups to the Small Business Association. It's not always the accelerators or these incubators. The SBDC was a great source of free help. They're the ones who actually helped me with my pitches before any of these other coaches that I have from the accelerators. They're the ones that told me I could prepare minimum 24 hours of work time before I pitch. And then so now we're part of 3 different incubators and accelerators. So now I have a tribe of people that I get to leverage their experience, and I have a VC coach, I have a finance advisor. So for each segment of the business, because, Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, all the greats who are great that you must study from had coaches. So for me, the relationships that I've built with them have been more sort of like business and formal, but they've become like friends of mine. So that's helped with understanding also the hard conversations and having that with them and being open. So make sure whoever your tribe is, you can be authentic when you talk to them about the BS that's going on.
Thank you. I think that's a tremendous answer. The next question that we have is really, who are your mentors? We talked about mentors a lot, some of which we have not met, many of which we have. And I know, Taj, you had mentioned this directly, but if anybody wants to answer that question, please take the room.
Can I jump in? All right, I'm probably one of the oldest guys in this room. I said one of, not the. And I have mentors of younger folks like Christian, like Paul. I'll listen to Ruben, I'll listen to Taj. The reason being is I don't know everything. The things that I know very well, but I always need help on the things I don't. I listen to my kids if they have something to say. In Proverbs, it says wisdom screams from the street. So the bottom line is that my mentors are everywhere, even on stop signs that I see, because sometimes you need to stop, sometimes you need to go. So if you don't have mentors, that's hard. It's hard not to look around and learn something from somebody every day.
Yeah, thank you for that. Does someone else want to hop in?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, just to echo on the mentorship thing. I think, sorry for the background noise, but there's something that I talk about in one of those posts that I shared called a personal board of directors. I like to think about creating a personal board of directors because like there's a really good book by Reid Hoffman called The Startup of You, right? And like you should start thinking about the career as an individual and yourself as a business, so yourself as your own brand. And people talk about how every company is a media company, but you yourself are a media company. So as you think about what you want people to know about you, or what story you want to tell, because we're all storytellers, because it's either you tell your own stories or somebody else is going to tell your story about you. You want to surround yourself by people that can help you shape the narrative that you're going to tell, or eventually become the person that you want to be. All right. So if I want to be like in shape, for example, I might surround myself by somebody that is a fitness guru like David Goggins. That has nothing to do with running a startup, but everything to do with running a startup as well, right? Because like if we talk about marathon mindset, how are you gonna have a marathon mindset if you never ran a marathon before, right? So as you think about like your business mentors, your fitness mentors, your spiritual mentors, your emotional mentors, surround yourself by this personal board of directors. You don't have to tell them they're on your personal board of directors, but it's like Christian, I don't know how Christian feels about me, but like he doesn't even have to tell me about mentorship. If he wanted to check in with me, I would serve that function for him because he knows how to handle it properly. He's not just like asking things of me. He's done his research on me. He's given value to me by being able to share with you, right? And I want to pour into him because I want to see him become greater than me, right? Without him even asking. And you're gonna do that when you talk to people. I talk a lot more about it in the blog post, but I just want you to start thinking about the personal board of directors and how you become this ultimate version of yourself.
I think one other thing too about the mentors being, they don't have to be what you consider a traditional mentor. I think that they do need to have the ability to be brutally honest with you and make you, hurt your feelings sometimes when you need it. Because sometimes that's the only way that you can get to that next step.
Yeah, and thank you all for those answers. I had a question directly for Brianna, and it was, how did you go about getting so many grants, and like, how was that process, and how did you keep motivated?
Yeah, so I actually just carved out time to like research. So researching grants, getting on the email list, like hearing about them. and applying to them. Like each week I set aside time and do it, and just really like making sure my package is together. So that goes from, I have a arsenal that I use basically of, just responses. Like most of the questions are going to ask like how you're impacted by COVID, your mission, your purpose. And we're so mission focused at the dance studio. And like we focus on age appropriate choreography, music, and costume. And so that sets us apart in our industry, where children are overly sexualized. So I think that resonates with a lot of people as well. So just carving out time, making sure I have that package together, making sure like, our website is on point, our pictures are on point, and then just submitting early. Like I actually, today, my husband took my son away. I have a 2-year-old, and I just sat down and knocked it out. I had like 5 grants I applied to today. So once you start getting the process of having all of your documentation, it doesn't, it's not hard because you know who you are, you know what you offer, you know about your brand, and you know how you're serving and impacting your community. So yeah, if you want to, talk to me about that, it's so much money out there. And I find that people, discount themselves or discredit themselves before they even apply. And you just have to know, what you're about, and don't discount yourself. So it's money out there for your business.
Don't miss that last part that she said. A lot of people doubt themselves. That's probably one of the most important things, man. Shoot your shot. You know, going back to what Paul said about all the weirdos, man. Like, you know, I said it in the chat, but like whatever you feel is weird about you is probably your superpower and what you should double down on, right? It's it's a superpower to be black. It's a superpower to be whatever you think people like think negatively about you. So embrace the fact that you're whatever it is, and it's not just race. It might be a disability. It might be a religion. It might be whatever. All of that is a superpower, and that's why you're going to get funded more than anybody else. You got to believe that.
Yeah, you know how many people said that like pregnancy dance is crazy in the African American community? Like it wasn't the norm. So even doubling down on that and telling people you can be active throughout a pregnancy. Like I danced up until 4 days with my first son. I'm kind of tired now, so I don't dance that much with this one, but I did with that first one.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we only have a few more minutes of the Q&A here, so I want to propose the next one, which is actually from Dr. Glossenberg. He's one of the tremendous professors we have in the entrepreneurship program here. A lot of work in social entrepreneurship, a lot of research in the area as well. But he asked, based on your unique experiences as entrepreneurs, how would you describe the entrepreneurial mindset to someone who has just started their own entrepreneurial journey? Bianca, you talked a lot about that from the beginning, trying to power through a lot of those tough portions and trying to stick true to what you founded for. So that's open to everyone, but I also know Bianca has some good topics on that as well.
I think one of the best books I've ever read about mindset for an entrepreneur is David Goggins. Again, it's a book called Can't Hurt Me, and I really highly recommend everybody to read that book because it's you'll realize how much you're underestimating yourself, and you'll feel like doing all kinds of superhuman things after you read that book. Be careful, because like he definitely takes it to a whole nother level. But it's an awesome book. Um, but going back to the whole thing about mindset and what'd you say, Paul, was like know your nose and your no nose, something like that. I like it because one of my entrepreneur friends, Deshaun, he's the CEO of Maven, which is a company that hosts hair salons. He told me that no's turn to yeses, right? So going back to that rejection type of thing, there's several investors that rejected me that eventually came in later. I'll give you an example. Um, One of the first investors that pitched $4 million check told me no, and recently they came in with a $7.5 million check. One of the first people I asked for a $25,000 check came in later at a $300,000 check, and then a $500,000 check after that. So don't burn bridges, don't have hard feelings. Just just take the feedback, whether it's right or wrong, and just execute and just holler at them when the price doubles, right? Because they came in at a much higher valuation later, and you still got the same people there. And if anything, like they gave you an opportunity to prove yourself. The book is called David Can't Hurt Me, Hurt Me by David Goggins. Um,
let me step in here, Ruben, as an investor and kind of give some light to that as well. A lot of times when we say no to entrepreneurs that we want to invest in, it's really not no, it's not right now. And I want to kind of give it a music analogy to why. Back in the 90s, if you're a lover of music, Boyz II Men found New Edition and they went to go sing to him on a bus stop. And Michael Bivins was like, yeah, I like him, sing to me, sign him to a record contract, and the rest is history if you're old enough to remember Boyz II Men. T.I., who's a rapper from Atlanta, somebody asked T.I. and said, can I come rap to you like Boyz II Men did New Edition? And T.I. said, nah, what you can do though, is show me your SoundCloud, show me your Instagram, show me your Twitter, show me your everything you're doing, to show me what work you already put in, because the times has changed. I think as an investor, there used to be a time where it used to be like a Boyz II Men situation where you have the idea on the napkin, you talk to the piece of it as well. But now you have a situation where angel investors are looking, and the people who are raised can probably attest to this, angel investors are expecting seed stage types of deals. Seed stage investors are expecting A-round types of deals. So the whole point about it is, to Ruben's point, absolutely. Sometimes the investor might not be ready right now. Sometimes we're looking at it, and sometimes we do want that car to turn in, from your Kia to a Cadillac, and the price would be a little bit expensive, but you'll be worth it. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I love the music analogy because I grew up as a musician. I've been playing the cello for almost 30 years. I think about venture capitalists kind of like a record label, right? And
yeah,
what he just talked about with the whole SoundCloud or whatever, that's kind of like your demo or your product that you've launched. And a lot of times people are trying to get a record label to give them a deal before they even made any music or before they even like have a hit single. And a record label only has a few artists that are like their biggest winners. And so they have to be careful with who they invest in or not. So you got to sometimes empathize on that. And I also want to highlight, just going back to the mindset thing, Taj has amazing imagery in his background, just like Jamal does. Like he has powerful Black queens in the background. And then Jamal got the greatest boxer that ever lived, talking about how he was the greatest before he even knew he was, right? Paul got the dream in the background and the dream catcher, right? And so that environment matters because you will doubt yourself. You will feel down and you need to dig deep to find who you really are. And I can talk about this all day long. Music helps you, but I'm glad that you said that. So I'll stop rambling.
Yeah, jump in with the music analogy, if that's okay. So you talked a lot about mindset, right? And so there's actually a show that I'm watching, or I just finished watching on Netflix, called The Beauty and the Baker. And so there is a character, one of the sons, his stage name is DJ or MC Cubano. And so kind of like what Taj said, he put in a lot of work, right? He had spent years putting time into his music, time into SoundCloud, time into mixtapes. And for the longest time, his family didn't believe in him, but he didn't give up. And he worked so hard at it that his family finally built him like a studio inside the bakery. And so what I'm going to say to everyone listening here, kind of like going back to mindset, is that sometimes you hear something or you get a calling and other people don't understand it. And that's okay if other people don't understand it. It wasn't a conference call. It was a specific message for you. And so don't give up on that. And that just go do what you're told to do and don't give up. Don't give up. And the only time you fail is when you quit. So I think I said that earlier, and I wanted to make sure that I said it again.
Thank you. I think we're going to take on one more question before we head into the very last portion of the evening. And I'll let Des go ahead and ask that one. I think we'll send it to the Q&A chat by Joseph Pearson.
Yeah, who is one of our members, and just asked, do you sustain off motivation or drive? Depending on what you choose, what is the drive or motivation, and how has it established the present and future identity of what you're doing? Could we start with Jamal and maybe hop to Dr. Parker?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Desmond. Oh, are we good? Yes. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Desmond. Really loaded question. I think it's a very common question, and I think in some ways like it's too common, too overused, and just too surface level. And I say that with no disrespect. When we talk about motivation and desire and things, like for me, again, we've been on this theme of mentors. One of my first mentors taught me the 9 basic motives that anyone has for doing anything. It could be one, it could be some combination of those, but I don't know, I guess I don't want to talk around this too much. What gets me going is that, like, I know that in 5 years, no matter what I decided to do, those 5 years will have passed. So if I decide to just go lay in my bed and watch TV and eat Doritos for 5 years, in 5 years, well, I will have done that. 5 years will have still passed. I still will have had some hard times. I still will have probably had some health issues. I still probably would have broken something or tripped here, and this didn't go well. That did go well. Life happens regardless. The clock keeps ticking regardless. So when I get bogged down, which we all do, I think it's just levels to it, just like it's levels to success. That's one thing that 100% keeps me going. It's like, it's not about being 100% every single day of your life. It's not about being, obviously, I think we all aspire to the myth that is now David Goggins, right? And never being hurt. And and just putting your life on the line for your dreams day in and day out, as the narrative goes, but just in a much more everyday real life context. That's what keeps me going. And just time is moving, and as long as I'm on this path, whether today I take 10 steps or only take 1 step, or I take a step back, as long as I'm on this path and this clock is still turning, like, whenever the clock stops for me, I know that I will be along this journey, and not having done something else that I didn't find fulfillment or joy in.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think I'm gonna pass it right back to Christian.
Yep, absolutely. We are right on schedule, everybody. I wanted to thank all of our amazing speakers for coming out tonight.